everybody. Today we are going to have a look at the Carenado 182T. This is an aircraft that is roughly the same size as the 172. It just has a 230 horsepower engine on the front, higher ceiling, and actually has some a little bit more advanced features as far as, it has oxygen and things like that. This one is the G1000. It does have a slightly different autopilot, which we will go into in a minute. Right now, I wanted to have a quick look at the outside textures, which is typical of Carenado, where they are, I'm going to just say, pretty much perfect. There's absolutely nothing on here that is blurry or out of sort of sync with the rest of the aircraft. I think that's something that a lot of developers sort of miss out on, is that they'll have one area that looks fantastic and another area that's not so fantastic, and it stands out even more, where this is just super consistent and thankfully also very high resolution. Now today we are sitting at Telluride, which is the highest commercial airport in the US, just over 9,000 feet, and we're going to be flying up to Aspen, which is the second highest commercial airport in the US. That one's roughly around, I think, 7,600 feet. There are other airports that are higher, but these are the highest commercial airports. Let's go ahead and jump on inside. Inside is much of the same as far as texturing goes. We do have a lot of high quality, high resolution textures. You can see the stitching nice, the patterns are nice, seat belts, everything on it is just very, very well done. As far as functionality in the cockpit, you do have the ability to open both windows and doors on both sides. Now, like I said, this is the G1000 cockpit. The main difference between this and the 172 is that it does not have the G1000, I think it's called the GFC or GFX 700 autopilot that you would be used to, that is sort of in here. The autopilot, which is a KAP 140, which is this guy here, ties into the G1000. Okay, it's a little different as far as the functionality goes. We also have a constant speed prop, so we do have control over our RPMs. We also have a prop heat, as well as the pitot heat, and we do have some cabin air and defrosting. I have tested the defrosting. It does work if you start to get a little bit of ice on the windows. But this is no way rated for sort of icing conditions, as there is no bladders on the wings or anything like that. But it is nice that if you get through like a small cloud or something, you see a little bit of ice building up, you can turn on your prop heat and defrost the windows. So let's go ahead and go through a startup procedure. To get this fired up, we need to go ahead and just crack that throttle about 1/4 of an inch. We're going to bring our prop full forward there, and then we are going to turn on our beacon light there. Now we can go ahead and turn on our alternator, or battery and alternator there. So pop that on. We're going to get our Garmin to load up. And once that is finished doing its sort of loading screen, we should have the majority of the X's gone. I believe these two will stay on, as they are part of the avionics. Once we have the the power on, we can go ahead and turn on our fuel pump, which is over here. And while that's on, we want to advance our mixture, and we're going to look at our fuel flow here. We just want that to sort of like peak up a little bit. So there it goes. Hold it for 3 to 5 seconds, back it off, and then we can go ahead and turn off that fuel pump. Essentially, we just primed the engine. From there, we can go ahead and turn over our magnetos to start. As the engine has sort of catched, we advance our our mixture forward. Now keep in mind, we are at pretty high elevation here. We're at 9,050-ish. So if you go full in, watch our RPMs as the engine warms up. I haven't touched them yet. We're at about, let's back that throttle off just a little bit. So if I was to go full mixture, those RPMs are going to drop. You can hear it starting to run a little bit rougher. If I bring that mixture back, we can start to see those RPMs increase again. And the reason why you want to do this is so that way we can have actual full throttle when taking off. You can keep on backing out. Just doing this slowly. So there was a little dip there, so we're going to bring it back in a little bit. And that'll give us the correct mixture during our startup. You can also set that doing a full run-up, but we're going to skip that for today. Let's go ahead and get our avionics turned on. And we can also go ahead and turn on our taxi lights and our nav light. Nav light. There we go. Now, like I said, our autopilot is down there. Today we are just doing a very simple flight plan, going from Telluride up to this HBU, which I believe is called Blue Mesa, and then we're going to take that directly up to Aspen. Aspen has a very unique approach, and we will go over that once we come in to land. We also want to get our CDI over to GPS. We could also do it by VOR and tune in the frequency, but because I have a GPS plan, we can just fly it by that. So let's go ahead and get taxied out onto the runway. Okay, we're holding short here at runway 27. This is the preferred takeoff runway for Telluride because of the terrain around it. We're basically sitting on a plateau surrounded by mountains. So we need to get our autopilot set up for our takeoff. We want to go up to 16,000 feet. So, like I said, this KAP 140 ties in a little funny there, but we can get a lot of settings put in on the G1000. So let's just go ahead and rotate our altitude up to 16,000. As far as our heading goes, we'll get that tuned in a little bit better once we line up on the runway here, which we'll go ahead and do now. We're going to go ahead and while we're rolling out, we're going to put on our landing lights, turn off our taxi lights, and get our strobe light on. I also want to make sure that my pitot heat is turned on as well. All right, so for takeoff, we are going to rotate around 50 to 60 knots. We're going to make sure we have 1 notch of flaps down. And then our initial climb out, we're looking for around 80 knots. And then once we're sort of clear, we can go ahead and raise our flaps up. We're going to bring back our manifold pressure with our throttle down to around 25, 26. But we can leave our props full forward, and we're just going to have to watch out for our mixture, which I'll show you how to set that for best performance as well. Let's go ahead and take off. Just going to advance that throttle in nice and slowly. All right, there we are at full throttle. You can tell we've got our mixture pretty much set well because we're at 2,400 RPMs. If you saw that it was lower than that, then you would want to make sure that you adjust your mixture for this higher altitude. There's 60. We can go ahead and rotate. Like I said, I'm looking for about 80 degrees for the initial, or sorry, 80 knots for the initial. There's 77. There we go, there's 80. I can just trim out for that for the time being. Now you notice our flight plan is kind of behind us, but there's no way we're going to clear those mountains. So we kind of have to fly around this guy and come around. There we go, we're clear of obstacles. Let's go ahead and raise up our flaps. And now we can tune our climb for between 90 and 100 knots, but we want to reduce our manifold pressure around 26 inches. Now you will get a lot of sort of quick wind changes from these mountains, which is to be expected. There you go. You can see we are now trimmed out for our climb. We're at 92 knots, 26 inches of manifold pressure, and holding good at 2400 RPMs. Now, as far as setting that mixture, which you need to adjust as we're climbing, you have this here, which is TIT, which is turbo intake temperature. So we can back that off until it peaks right there. That is going to be how you set your mixture in this aircraft. And you'll need to adjust probably your trim after you set that, but you want to do that every so often as you're climbing. Once you get to cruise, you set it and forget it. But then same again as you're coming in from your descent, you want to make sure you're adjusting your mixture as you come in. So let's go ahead and enable that autopilot. Down here, we can just hit autopilot on, and then you can see it's got the 1600 tied in. Let's get our heading mode set currently and turn on heading. That'll level us off. Now, in order to control your vertical speed, you have your altitude set, which you can change here as well. We need to arm it, and you can see it locked on my vertical speed. So it automatically picks up your vertical speed for what you have set, so you don't have a big nose dive or anything there. If you want to change that vertical speed, you can just click on the up or down, and it will change that setting for you, which you can also see on here. The thing to keep in mind is watch that airspeed, because as we get up higher and higher, it's going to be a little bit more difficult to maintain that 90 to 100. So here we are leveling off at 16,000 feet. I kept our altitude right at, or our airspeed right in that sort of 90-95 range, just by adjusting our vertical speed. Now we're going to level off, and we need to get our cruise settings, and we're also coming up to our flight plan here, so I'm just going to go ahead and click on the nav button. You notice it didn't change anything on here. This G1000, I don't know if this is accurate or not, if the way this ties into that in real life, but it'll capture that as we get close enough and make our turn over. But we need to set our cruise settings. Now, for me, I always like to do a sort of what I call the Goldilocks cruise, where it's not too fast, it's not too slow. But where do you get those numbers from in order to actually get those cruise settings? Well, Carenado is great, and they have all the performance charts and checklists on their website for you to download. So I currently have open the cruise performance chart that they have available, or just a performance chart. Now we're currently at 16,000 feet. You can see they have other ones for different altitudes. So for me, Goldilocks, just go right to the middle and right to the middle. So this is your RPMs, this is your manifold pressure. So let's go 2200 RPMs, 2400 inches of manifold pressure, and we're roughly going to be at standard temperature, because like I said, we're going to be roughly in the -10 to -15 degrees Celsius. So if we look at that, that's going to give us, this is your percentage of power. This is going to be your true airspeed, not your indicated. This is your true airspeed, and it's going to give you your estimated fuel burn as well. So let's go back in. We're just going to do 24 inches of manifold pressure, 22 inches of RPM. You can also see down here, for best economy, operate at peak turbo intake temperature. So let's go ahead and get that set. So first thing you want to do is come over, and I just have my hand on my throttle, and we're going to bring this down to 24 inches, and then come down and set our RPMs down to 2200. You can just hear it singing along nicely now. And then as far as our mixture, it's probably pretty close. Yep, so I already had it pretty much set as we were climbing out, so right around there. And you'll see our speed is now going to drop and level off at 147 knots. So now the approach, just want to go over a quick briefing on that, because it is very unique coming into Aspen. It's one of the tougher ones in the United States. Now we're going to be doing what's called the Roaring Fork visual approach. So let's go ahead and bring that up, because it is rare that you get a diagram for a visual approach at airports. So we are coming from the south and heading up. Now you can see we've got all these different sort of ways to get in. Now Castle Peak is the southernmost one, so let's see if we can't spot that already, which we can. It's this one here. Over here would be Capital Peak, and then we have Castle Peak. So what we want to do, they're saying 16,000 is recommended to fly over Castle Peak, which we're going to be doing. We're going to see the town of Aspen and see the runway. And we're really just going to kind of, there's mountains right here. We just kind of want to start our descent down. Really about in here while we're kind of just kissing these trees. We want to be, you know, around 9,700 feet, as the airport is, I believe, at... Do they have the altitude on here? Don't believe they do, but it is around 7,600 feet, I believe. All right, so we started our descent. What I've done is I've just set our altitude at 9,700 feet, armed it, and then set our descent rate to around 700 feet per minute, and I'll probably need to adjust that as we're coming in. We can see Aspen runway right there. So what we need to do to follow that visual approach is really, this is what we need to fly out to, and then we're going to be making a turn. Really, this is that ridge that's on the approach, and then we're going to be coming in and landing on runway 15. We'll rejoin when we're on final coming in. Okay, so here we are on final. I've got 2 notches of flaps in, going about 100 knots. And we're a little high, but that's okay. This aircraft slows down nicely. We're looking between 60 and 70 knots for touchdown. I have 2 notches of flaps in. We can go ahead and introduce that 3rd notch of flaps and really start to bring us down. We're also going to bring our RPMs full forward there. So there's 80 knots. Still coming down on the speed. This is where you start to get pushed around quite a bit, and you want to keep that speed up just a little bit. Watching it fall, there's 65. That's looking better. Now we can start to back off a little bit, not a lot. I'll get lined up a little bit better here. I always go a little bit too far to the left on this airport because that mountain's right on this side. That's better. Alright, there's 60. Coming to idle. Main wheels first. And bring the nose down. Very minimal braking needed. Flaps coming up. I'm going to get off of the next exit here. There we are. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed the flight. If you have any questions, comments, please leave them down below, and I really would appreciate it if you subscribe to the channel for more videos like this. Until next time, take care.